everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Milton, and here is another session of Quick Tips. I work for British Council Mexico in the academic management team, and I've been supporting with these quick tip videos. The purpose of them is to lead in and contextualize different training ideas and different teaching ideas as we get closer to BBELT 23. BBELT is the best and brightest of English language teachers, a conference which is happening next week. I'll be providing a bit more information about that at the end of the video. So today we're going to be looking at lessons from remote teaching, lessons from COVID. During the pandemic, all of us had to adapt to teaching and learning online and teaching and learning using digital tools. The purpose of this session today is to reflect on some of the biggest lessons that we learned and how we can ensure that this doesn't get forgotten now that the vast majority of us are back in in-person classes, back face-to-face. So how do we ensure that we don't forget what we learn? So the objectives are to have a little consideration as to how COVID affected learners. Consider what this means for teachers and teaching and what we do in the classroom and how we set up our classes. I'm going to focus on 4 courses of action to ensure teachers meet changing learner needs. And then at the end, we'll be discussing a little bit about BBELT and the discounts available for those of you who are interested in joining us next week. Okay, so let's begin. So here is, first of all, I'm going to begin with some statistics, some information. Now, there's been many studies conducted since the pandemic and since lockdown about what this means in behavior, not only for English language students, but for learners in general and for workers and for society, quite frankly. So here are some numbers for you. So 68% of Mexican office workers would like to continue to work remotely. This is from Forbes. 50% of British adults want to continue studying and working remotely. This is from YouGov, a famous survey website. Here internally at the British Council, we conducted surveys as well. 80% of existing, past, and potential adult students would like to study online, with 58% of young learners. 75% of Mexican 15-year-olds use educational websites and apps, and 73% of USA higher education students would like to take fully online courses. As you can see, these are all from all well-known sources. So there's a very big desire from students, teachers, and workers to retain some of the remote working, remote teaching that we all became so familiarized with during the pandemic. Why is this? Why do learners like digital learning? Why do they like learning remotely? Well, here are some answers. I think probably this is something that we can all empathize with and agree on, is that using technology is a lot easier than anticipated. Not easier, but more effective and much better, quite frankly, than most of us thought it would be and anticipated it would be. Now, due to the need during lockdown and everybody working remotely, learners have had to adapt. We focus, of course, on learners of the English language, and Cambridge University Press, in their surveys, have stated that confidence in learner autonomy and learner independence has risen. So learners since the pandemic, since lockdown, have become more confident and more capable of their own independence when learning. We also know now that once accustomed, students prefer feedback given with digital tools such as video and audio to feedback given in writing, and even feedback given spoken one-to-one. Why? We'll discuss that in a minute. Flexible work and study schedules are perceived as more attractive. I think all of us now, to some extent, agree with this. I'm not sure about you and your personal circumstances, but to some extent, remote working and remote teaching, remote learning has remained in the vast majority of circumstances. Maybe we are now completely face to face, but it's quite unusual in most circumstances, to have completely forgotten and completely discontinued some of the digital tools we started to use during the pandemic, and now we're, it's considered as more attractive. So, what does this mean for teachers? So, quite frankly, we need to accept and come to terms with the fact that a lot of adult learning will remain remote. If there is a demand from learners for a specific modality of learning, it will exist. And as there is a big demand for remote learning, we have to understand and adapt to the fact that a lot of it will remain remote. As learners have become accustomed to digital tools in the classroom for feedback and assessment, and as part of the curriculum, they will demand that too. And us as teachers, we have to continue to adapt and be aware of what learners expect, what learners understand to be useful for them, and also our expertise as the fantastic teachers that we all are, what we know to be good for our learners. Technology will not only remain an important part of English language teaching, it will also remain a vital part of CPD, continuous professional development. So the way that us as teachers, as academic managers, as directors, as decision makers, a lot of our personal learning will, to some extent, involve technology, if not just as much as it did during lockdown and the pandemic, to some extent as much as it did. And it's important to be aware that even if classes are face-to-face, even if all of your teaching is now face-to-face, it is 100% apparent that video conferencing skills, digital collaboration skills, all these things that we had to adapt to during lockdown will be very important for young learners in their future. As we've just mentioned, a lot of working styles, a lot of working schedules, to some extent, will remain flexible and will have a remote or virtual aspect. So the skills involved in participating in a world like that are even more important and even more, it's even more important that us as teachers support learners to react to that environment that they will be exposed to when they start working. So it's important to just now accept and become accustomed to that this is the way the world is now. Students expect this, they demand this. It's our responsibility as teachers to provide this. We also, as teachers and educators, will continue to learn this way ourselves in our own professional development. And we need to remember what fundamentally students are going to need, especially young learners, in their future. So here are 4 assumptions. Perhaps you personally, you didn't have this assumption pre-COVID, but I think a lot of people did assume these statements, and now, since COVID, since the pandemic, since lockdown, since we've returned back to face-to-face learning, it has become completely apparent that this is now outdated. So, first of all, the learning process. What happens in the classroom is the most important. We talked earlier about how confidence in learner autonomy has risen. Students are now more independent than they were and more confident in their own autonomy. So this balance of learning before, where it may have been something like 90% in the classroom, 10% homework, this balance is now changing. To what extent depends on context, but the scales are moving. Digital tools are only there to supplement learning. Many teachers before the pandemic had made this assumption. It's not the case now. Digital tools must be part of the curriculum. They must be integrated into the whole course. What learners care most about are grades. As we realized, assessment and the way that we delivered assessment needed to be adapted during the pandemic, we became a little bit more flexible. We became a little bit more reliant on giving feedback rather than grades. Students and teachers have realized in large numbers that this is perhaps more useful in language learning than just giving grades. And now in learner collaboration, no, I'm not saying this is the same for everybody, but in many cases, collaboration between learners, in most cases, happens solely within the classroom. Again, during COVID and during the pandemic, during lockdown, it became evident that it could happen outside of the classroom. There could be collaborative projects, collaborative discussions, not only within a classroom, but within a school, and connecting several schools or connecting several groups of people across a city, across a country, across a region, internationally. So let's have a look at some tips as to how to react to these now outdated assumptions so that we are more up to date with what we deliver in our classrooms. So, supporting learner commitment outside of the class. One thing to consider now is our learning objectives. We call them learning objectives in the British Council. Maybe you call them can-do statements. Maybe you call them curriculum aims. There are many words for this, but what us as teachers are hoping to achieve during a course or during a term should have outside classroom work integrated as part of the objective. So whether that be collaborative, whether it be assessment, whether it be developing autonomy, this needs to be now integrated into our objectives and aims. Students can write journal entries about each of their class online. This is something that I've been doing with my classes. I'm a very big fan of student journals and student diaries as a way of encouraging better reflection from students, and for me also to monitor their progress as their teacher. This is now, since the pandemic, I've now done this on an Excel spreadsheet where students put a short journal entry at the end of every class or at the end of every week, sometimes at the end of every 2 weeks, about what they have learned. By documenting all of this onto a live spreadsheet, what has been really, really good is that students don't forget their journal. They don't lose their journal. Students can read the diary journal entries of their peers. And what this has generated has been a more reflective approach to these journal entries. They can see what others are doing, and then it can also see what they've written in previous weeks, previous lessons, etc. So this has resulted in a much more effective file keeping in terms of the portfolio, the journal, the diary, whatever you want to call it. And it's also allows students to kind of reflect on what their peers are doing. Now, it's important to remember that personal study, so studying outside of the classroom, learner autonomy, learner independence, can be hit or miss. What do I mean by this? That not every strategy, not every tip is perfect for every learner. So we need to support learners in their discovery of what is right for them. You can train your learners for each tip. So set up the learning. If you're going to train learners to use an audio recording app to improve speaking, give them some suggestions for how to do it. Allow them to try it first within the classroom, give them some feedback, allow them to share with their peers, and then use a scaffolded approach as much as the same way as we would set up a classroom task, but use the same scaffolded approach to setting up personal study and learner autonomy. Because it can be tricky, it's difficult. So it's our responsibility as teachers to provide the support they need. And then what's absolutely vital in this is acting as a role model, us as teachers. If we are not very good at updating our class, giving feedback to our students, if we're not very good at responding to student work that they do outside of the classroom, if we're not demonstrating that we are also supporting our learners to develop outside of the classroom, they're going to lose interest. So we need to be on top of it more so than our students are. So using digital tools as part of a curriculum. Now, this can take shape in many ways. It can take shape in terms of what happens in each individual class. It can be the way that we communicate with our students outside of the class. It can be the way that we evaluate our students and provide feedback. Or it can just be some of the classroom activities. So one thing that I have discovered in the last 3 years is OneNote. If you don't know OneNote, maybe you know Evernote. There are many applications similar to this. What is it? OneNote, this purple icon here, it's a digital note-taking application. So if I'm participating in a meeting, I will take down the minutes on OneNote. If I'm listening to a lecture, I will take down my thoughts, my reflections, my notes on OneNote. What's great about OneNote is that all of your notes will never get lost. It always gets saved, on the cloud. So first of all, you don't lose it. Secondly, it's very easy to organize and file and record using an effective system. So apart from not losing the piece of paper that you might take your notes on, it will all be saved in one place and it'll be filed correctly. The other great thing is you can attach multimedia. So you can, to your notes, you can attach an image. Or if you have a thought, you can record yourself quickly and attach an audio reflection. And this allows for greater interaction with your notes, basically. There's also learning management systems, things like Google Classroom, Schooly. There are many, Seesaw, all of these. They may have already been part of your curriculum before the pandemic, but it's now, let's make sure we continue to use this as a way that we communicate with our students, as a way that we set up homework, set up collaborative tasks outside the classroom, set up interactive projects outside the classroom, and also the way to give feedback. I do less complete the gap tests now than I used to. What I generally do now is using these kind of quick, short tests as regular progress tests. So maybe at the end of the week, or even at the end of a lesson. And what I do is, rather than write it on a Word document or write it on the board, I prepare all of these short progress tests on digital platforms such as Google Forms, or there are many platforms in which you can do this. Why? Why is this good? Well, the good thing about using something like Google Forms is it can give immediate feedback to students if you program in the answers. Also, you can save these tests and use them for future classes. It's easily adaptable. Students can retake it as many times as they like. It can very easily be saved and stored. And you can also attach the link to the assessment to the learning management systems that you're using. So students can see the test as part of the curriculum when they reflect at the end of a course. Giving digital feedback, recording, asking students, well, giving students feedback recorded or by, it can be an audio or a video. What's great about this, we mentioned this at the beginning, that students, once they receive this type of feedback, they like it and they want it. Why? It's because they can save it. They can listen to it as many times as they like. They can listen to the feedback that the teacher gives at the beginning of the course. They can save it. The teacher will give some feedback a bit later in the course, maybe in the middle or maybe at the end, and the student can reflect and listen to both, and they can visualize and understand the progress that they've made in that period of time. So students see the value in being able to save the feedback and keep a record of it, basically. And then there are also digital classroom activity tools. So two of my favorites are Wordwall and Bamboozle. Wordwall is a great activity, a great application to practice vocabulary. You can make many different games out of it very easily. I'm not particularly proficient with technology, but I've really explored Wordwall and made a lot of fun activities and a lot of games. Another one of my favorites, Bamboozle, where also there are many different. You can use it to practice vocabulary. You can use it to practice grammar. You can use it to practice, things like functional language, reading, whatever. They're both great tools, and the best thing about them is once you prepare something on them, they're there. You can use them in the future as many times as you like. So feedback, we were talking about how most of us have now realized that students prefer feedback to grades. Let's think about assessment in general. Many of us have restrictions, and many of us must give grades as part of our curriculum. That's okay. Grades, there is still a place for grades. Okay, I'm not saying that, but maybe we don't need to give so many grades so frequently. Assessing less and assessing better. So giving grades only when we really need to, and using other evaluation opportunities, other report opportunities to provide personalized and informative feedback to each student rather than a number or a letter. Students prefer it. It's much more valuable, and it's easy to do. Giving learners as responsibility and flexibility with assessments. One thing that I've experimented a lot with in the last few years is allowing students to have some input into how they will be assessed. Now, this may take form in different ways. I've asked students, what criteria do you want me to give you feedback on? Do you want me to give you feedback on pronunciation, on grammar, on coherence? Giving them some say in that. It can also be, what modality? Would you like it to be a test? Would you like it to be complete the gap test using Google Forms? Or would you like it to be a speaking activity where I give you some recorded feedback? So giving them some choice in their assessments. Training learners how to respond to feedback. So remember, we talked about previously making feedback a developmental dialogue. So you give feedback at one stage, make sure you give feedback to the students on the same topic a bit later. So for example, at the beginning of a course, I may give some students, I may say, you performed very well in the task, but consider how to use the present perfect. Here is an example of you using it incorrectly. The next time I give feedback to this student, I will say one or two things. You used the present perfect excellently in this project. Well done. Or there are still some problems with the way you use the present perfect. Here are some suggestions. Here is an example of what you did. This is what you could do. Let's reflect on it again the next point. Making sure students are aware of that, training them on how to respond. to that. Feedback must be easily stored and tracked. Digital tools are best for this. So it's the point I was making earlier of being able to record feedback, students being able to organize it and file it within their systems, and us also as teachers, quite frankly, in making it easier for us to remember the feedback we're given and what we're focusing on in each student. And learner collaboration outside the classroom. So before the pandemic, a lot of this happened within the classroom. Using technology has made it completely evident that this can happen outside. So something that has become very, very interesting that I've seen with some of my fellow teachers is setting up collaborative homework. So giving learners, whereas kind of collaborative projects might have always happened within the classroom, why can't they not happen outside of the classroom? So giving learners a project to do, for example, making a poster, you have to make the poster for homework in a group of 4. So what learners have to do is that they have to arrange to meet on Zoom or whatever platform they're using and do the homework as a group. And this ultimately gives them life skills for scheduling meetings, participating in a group discussion, working, and it's outside the view of the teacher, which means that they have a lot of independence, and it also means that it's a real world task. Of course, if they're young learners, then some considerations need to be taken into place about safeguarding and their safety. But when set up right, this can be invaluable. Use shared documents as much as possible. Shared Excels for journals. Shared forms for assessment. Shared Word documents for a writing task, so that once it is handed in, once it is shared, it can be part of. You can give feedback as the teacher. Students can ask you questions after, and it can be part of an ongoing conversation rather than once it's handed in, it's finished. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Set up collaborations with other schools and countries. I'm not sure if you've used Skype in the classroom. Skype in the classroom is a great way to connect with other schools around the world or experts around the world who are prepared to give a lecture or a class on their subject of a specialist subject. If you haven't seen it, do look into it. It's great. And the British Council, one thing that has been fantastic is a project that we've set up called Connecting Cultures. Our young learner students are talking to young learner students in British councils in all over the world, in Spain, in Venezuela, in Turkey, in Asia, and it's provided great opportunities for internationalism, learning about other cultures, learning about other people, and it's also created very interesting bonds between students, not only across classrooms but across borders and across continents. So it's been a fantastic experience. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting. Please do comment in the chat if you have any questions, or if you have any ideas that you would like to share with the audience. I think it's be a great idea if we could all share all ideas together, and everyone has access to them, and this would be a great space to kind of cascade knowledge and learn from each other, which is what we're promoting, right, in these talks. But now on to BBELT, the best and brightest in English language teaching. This is happening next week on the 17th and 18th of February, next week on Friday and Saturday. The theme of the conference this year is moving forward and learning together. What is BBELT? BBELT is perhaps the most prestigious English language teaching conference in the Americas. It is based here in Mexico, but because it's being held on a virtual platform, there will be speakers, academic presentations, forums, talks, and workshops from people all around the continent, including Europe. So there will be participants, people joining from internationally, and also experts delivering their knowledge from different countries around the world. It's an opportunity for you to showcase your brand, your products, your services to different decision makers, educators, and researchers in the field of English language teaching. It's not just a conference for teachers. There will also be publishers, directors of schools, decision makers. It's a great opportunity to network and to find like-minded people and people who may, people where there could be some opportunities for yourself or your organization. It's a great place. BBELT is a great place for teachers from different environments, different contexts, to share their ideas, to learn from each other, and to discuss new ways of teaching and new ways of implementing these ideas in the classroom. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so as soon as possible. This is next week. And here, you can do so here with a 60% discount using the code that I've shown below. So PRM202311 is a discount code for you to get 60% off. In the link below, you click on this link, you complete the registration document, and once you get to the moment of paying for your ticket, you insert this discount code and it will instantly give you the discount. I've showed you here on the bottom of my screen, but it's also in the comment box and it has appeared a couple of times across the screen. So you have it there. So, and finally, this is the last week of BBELT Quick Tips. So I hope you found this very interesting. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope there was some learning happening across, and I very much enjoyed delivering these sessions. If you want to connect with me, please do. I'll read the comments, and thank you very much, and have an excellent afternoon, and look forward to seeing you next week at BBELT. Okay, thank you everybody. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.